Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Johnathan Clementi. I work for Farallon Geographics, and I'm part of the Lingo and controlled lists developer team. Today, I'm going to be talking with you all about migrating your data from the reference data manager into Arch's controlled lists and or Arch's Lingo. So shout out to Rob for a great presentation a second ago. I hope that these kind of questions that are up on the screen right now are percolating in your head. So yeah, namely, should I start using Arch's controlled lists? Should I start using Arch's Lingo? Now, while I may not be able to answer those two questions for you and your use case, I will definitely hope that by the end of this presentation, you will know how to extract, transform, and load your reference data in the RDM into into Arch's controlled lists and or Arch's Lingo based on your use case. So I think every good ETL process starts with understanding your source data and the context around that. So whether you're super familiar with the RDM and its schema or not familiar at all, I'm going to start out on that ground level and work up. So as Rob mentioned, there are kind of two primary use cases with the RDM right now. There's the first use case of creating and maintaining controlled vocabularies. And then there's the second use case of managing what I will colloquially refer to as collections, which are really controlled lists, but collections in the RDM to populate dropdowns in the resource editor in Arches. And so I like to fish. I'm going to take this fishing object hierarchy from the fish archaeological objects thesaurus as an example to kind of facilitate our discussion today. And I want to look at how this hierarchy exists in the database. So we have three primary tables in the schema that power the RDM. We have the concepts table, which hold basically the nodes in the hierarchy. And you'll see that the nodes in the hierarchy are described by the node type column. So a thesaurus has a concept scheme node type, and any concepts that are below just have the concept type. Additionally, we have the values table, which provides semantic human readable meaning to these concepts. So we have things like preferred labels, alternative labels, hidden labels, scope notes, etc., that are stored in the values table. And then the way that we kind of capture relationships between these concepts is through the relation table. So we use the concept IDs for the parent concept in the concept ID from column to the concept ID 2, which represents the child. And at least at the thesaurus level, we often describe those relations using the narrower type. When you want to take this thesaurus and start using it in resource management, you'll go into the RDM and click a button that migrates a component piece of your thesaurus into a collection. And what happens there is if I wanted to take the fishing object hierarchy in the thesaurus and make that into a collection, a new record in the concepts table will be created for that individual collection. And then in the relations table, we create new records for each link between between a concept participating in a collection back to the collection itself. So kind of jumping back to those questions that I initially posed to you, I hope that you're beginning to intuit the kind of bifurcation of these use cases. And it's worth kind of repeating that Lingo or Arch's Lingo is going to be used primarily for authority data management, and the thesauri and concepts are stored as resource instances. They're first-class citizens, and all of their attributes are stored as tiles. Whereas on the other side, we are going to start managing controlled lists using the Arches controlled list application. And in there, the concepts and collections and the concepts that belong to them are stored in this redesigned database schema. I would venture a guess that Arches controlled list is probably going to replace the RDM, the most common use case of the RDM, which is populating these dropdowns in the resource editor. And I'll add this little kind of asterisk that in the future, we're hoping that Arches controlled list and the reference data type can also encompass other types of reference data. So let's kind of get down on the ground with where this bifurcation is happening. We see that the RDM is kind of being split. Concepts and the thesauri that they belong to going over to Lingo, and the collections and their concepts, as well as the domain lists going over into Arches controlled lists. And I've added the kind of as a reminder that the node type and relation type division between these two applications. Since I'm venturing a guess that the most common use case is going to be Arches controlled lists, I'm going to kind of focus on that at the top and start getting into this redesigned database schema. So Arches controlled lists ships with a new schema. We have the list table, the list item table, and then the list item value table. And Rob touched on this a second ago, but I want to highlight that list items, while in the RDM, we can store URIs or identifiers as values, but God bless you. The URIs are becoming are required entries for list items, and we're also storing sort order explicitly in the table. So where this comes in, what's happening in the data migration is a collection in the RDM side is becoming a controlled list, a list. Any concepts that belong to that collection become list items. The nodes in that hierarchy become list items. And they're associated back to the collection that they belong to via this list ID column. And then the human readable semantic meaning, all of the labels that are associated with that concept are inserted into the list item values table. This is kind of very similar to the way that the values table exists currently. Okay, so that's kind of the high level understanding of the updated database schema. Here's the as I envision the rough roadmap for how you would go about migrating and migrating your RDM data into the Arches controlled list application to get up and running with the application. So any good ETL process hopefully begins with data cleaning. Your mileage may vary here. You may need to do a lot of cleaning. You may not need to do any cleaning. But I'm going to put that at the beginning so that you may have to kind of work on massage your data before you start migrating over. The next step is migrating the actual collection into controlled lists. After that, if you have Arches models that are using the concept data type with their associated collections, we're going to update those models to use the reference data type and then the newly minted controlled list. And I've highlighted that this is kind of out on the horizon, but we're also going to provide tools to update your business data once you have your models updated and your collections ready to go, or sorry, your control lists. So before I show the command, I just want to note some important things about this migration. Like I mentioned a second ago, URI is required, and understanding that some concepts may not have a URI, we will allow the implementer to provide a host to basically mint a placeholder URI. We also know that that sort order, while not required, it's good to populate. So if you don't have a sort order associated with your concept, we will calculate that based on a preferred sort language, and then fall back where necessary. I'm also maintaining any concept ID or value IDs that I can, where possible. But for instance, if a concept participates at multiple locations in the hierarchy, those concepts become distinct list items, meaning they have their own new list item ID. So I wrote a SQL function that does all of this, but then I've also added in a CLI wrapper that you can just call from the command line. Here are the parameters that are necessary for that. This all is coming with the controlled list application. You want to identify the collection or collections that you're trying to migrate via this CO or collections parameter. The host parameter, as I mentioned a second ago, for minting those placeholder URIs. Preferred sort language for determining how concepts are sorted in the collection, or list items are sorted, and then whether you want to overwrite the collection that exists currently. Okay, through the power of show business, I just for my sanity recorded these rather than doing a demo, live demo that is. So what I'm going to do here is first illustrate that I have the fishing object. Oh, geez, I'm going really fast. I was really twitchy when I recorded this, Rob. We're going to show you that I have the fishing object collection in my RDM instance. I'm going to go over to the control list manager and show you that I don't have anything up my sleeve. I don't have the fishing object controlled list in there yet. I'm going to go over to my command line. I have already typed out the command because, easier, power of show business. But yeah, this will all be documented and in the read the docs. Execute the command. Go back over into the control list. Refresh the page, and bada bing, bada boom, we've got our fishing object collection in place. I'm exploring the concepts. The list items that belong to that list. And all right, I'm on to the next thing. So if you remember my roadmap, the next thing to do would be update your graphs to use the reference data type rather than the concept data type. This is a pretty simple execution. We're honestly just updating node configuration and widget configuration. But we have a check in there that makes sure that you have migrated the collection over to a controlled list before you execute this function. And you're just providing a graph ID or a slug to, for the graph to that you want to update those nodes on. All right, same business here. So I've created this simple graph with the fishing object node and configured it so that it's a concept data type using the fishing object collection. I'll go into the cards, just show you the dropdown. We're using the concept select widget. I'll go over into the CLI, type it out. That's fine. Again, all documented. Run the command, go back into the resource or the graph designer. And now we have a reference data type node using the collection, and we can use the widget in situ there. All right. Oh. Okay. Here is where, in the kind of order of operations, where you would start migrating your business data. But as I said, that's going to be still in development. So I'm going to switch gears over to Arch's Lingo now, and migrating, if you are a semanticist, using Arch's Lingo. Okay, so as Rob and I mentioned earlier, Lingo ships with concept and scheme models that are going to capture all of the kind of concept attributes that are of interest. And here I'll show the rough mapping between the RDM tables and these new resource instances. So what happens in this migration is that a thesaurus and any concepts, those become the resource instances. The nodes in the hierarchy become the resource instance. The values that are associated with those concepts are slotted into various node groups on the resource. They're basically tile data. So all of our pref labels, alt labels, hidden labels go into the label node. All of our identifier, statements, capture notes, descriptions, etc. And then we're also capturing the relationships. So we have a top concept of that captures the top concepts, or the top concept of a scheme. And then we always track, this is kind of a little bit different from the RDM as it exists now, but we're tracking which thesaurus or scheme a concept belongs to. So we'll always have that reference back to the top. We don't have to recurse up the tree every time we want to figure out where the concept belongs. And a side note, like I'm showing the resource report here rather than Lingo, just so that you understand where all the tile data are slotting in. Okay, and then the last power of show business bit. I'm going to migrate the entire fish archaeological objects thesaurus and just kind of in the middle bit speed through things. So here in my RDM, I have this thesaurus. Nothing up my sleeve, don't have any concepts or schemes loaded into my instance. I'm going to go into the bulk data manager, migrate this. Oh, that got cut off. That's a bummer. Whatever. There's just a button at the bottom that initializes the migration. Here is the speedy bit. This takes like a couple minutes, so just wanted to speed things along. Great. We're done, we're indexed. We'll see that we have a scheme instance for the fish archaeological objects thesaurus. And then I'm going to go look for my fishing object concept. And I'll take a look at the resource report. I guess this is the editor, but yeah, and then we'll see also that I can navigate over to the fishing objects parent, the agriculture and subsistence concept, and it also has all of the necessary tile data associated with it. Okay. And just like that, and that's pretty much where the migrations stand to date. So as Rob mentioned, here are the application repositories for Lingo control lists and their supporting components, and my email if you want to complain vigorously about the migration.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Also, exceptionally well timed.
Right on the dot. Yeah.
Perfect. So we've a good bit of time for questions, discussion. And you've probably noticed we have tried to make sure we have good opportunities for questions, discussions, to seed some of that for Wednesday. So make sure you get your haranguing in now. Thankfully, Jonathan's left plenty of space for to be abused over the next 10 minutes. Thank you.
Is there a question regarding the, sorry,
Microphone, please. Yeah.
the terms, the control vocabulary, the term, they're stored as resource instances now, so are they in the same table? Whether?
No. So moving from the RDM to resource instances, we're leveraging the core functionality of arches, the resource instance table, the tiles table, and everything that kind of supports them. So I guess the short answer is no. They're distinct new arches resources rather than existing in the RDM table. Am I understanding your question correctly?
So they're stored as part of the resource instances in the resource instance table?
Yes.
In the case of Lingo.
In the case of Lingo,
yes. So how do we exclude them if we need to?
You don't have. You only use the Lingo application if you're doing that work. And if you don't, you...
And if we migrate the business data, does this get migrated or it gets excluded?
I don't understand the question, sorry.
I think it needs to be, so,
Yeah.
in the new, sorry, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rob. So in the new way of doing things, the RDM as it stands will no longer exist, and your Archer's instance will have the controlled list manager. You will subscribe to a Lingo service, and Lingo is a separate application. So the resource instance data in Lingo goes nowhere near your system, in essence.
The only caveat I would put there is you needed to subscribe to Lingo.
Yeah.
Control list to populate with whatever you want. It might be Lingo data, it might be, like I did, yes, no, maybe, you know.
So you can just have your instance. You can just create your own controlled lists if you want. You don't have to, have the complexity of the AAT or the fish thesaurus. You can just create your own. But if you wanted to, say, take a facet of the AAT, you could subscribe to a Lingo service and then draw that into your controlled list manager to stop you having to reinvent that wheel.
Yeah, I guess I should kind of back up at the beginning of my presentation and say, like, these migrations are in place for those folks who have, are actively using the RDM to for all of their different use cases. Like, we're trying to kind of move from the old paradigm to the new paradigm. But in the new paradigm, yeah, like Rob mentioned in his talk, you can create new lists and yeah.
So it's kind of to follow up on that. So Lingo's essentially a new resource type. And I was wondering if you looked at doing the same for controlled lists, because there's a bunch of stuff that seems relevant there when you're dealing with controlled lists. So things like audit history, and also sort of the extension of, like, one of the use cases we have coming from older applications, doing ETL from there, there's kind of the concept of, we had this list here, we want a sub-list of that now for new resources moving forward. And so attributes like, is this thing active or not? Right, and so we've got, like, the sort order is, like, burned into the new schema, but it seems like there could be an opportunity to allow that kind of thing, just like in a resource instance, I guess, where it's like, I want to apply this filter to this list, right? So it would allow you to allow existing data to be there with a list item that's no longer active. So it's a very specific case, but sort of the extension point. So this is no longer active. So in the list that you're presenting to people in the future, it's like I want all the active ones, but I still want the old ones to exist with an inactive value. And so I was wondering what the rationale was for not using. I mean, one of the obvious ones, of course, is that you don't want your RDM concepts to show up by default. But one could filter that out. So I was just sort of wondering if that thought process happened and why the decision was made that way.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that.
Yeah. Get on up here, Rob.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, quite a few things there. List items in the controlled list manager are not intended to be like the canonical definition of the data. They're references to things, and that's the importance of the URI, right? So we didn't want to like make it a data management platform as such, right? We wanted it to just be a way to manage controlled lists that reference some canonical definition of the thing. And we keep coming back to Lingo, but really, to me, it's like, it could be anything, right? That URI could point to whatever definition of the thing you want. Well, maybe this isn't an aside. Here's how we got to controlled lists, right? We needed to manage references inside of the Lingo models. And then it becomes this circular thing, right? Where you're like, okay, if we were, because we originally conceived of it as exactly what you're saying, right? But now you can kind of, it becomes like, it recursive because you keep needing to make references back to more and more models, right? And you get this like this sort of recursive tree of models or model instances. So to solve that, we wanted to kick out to something that was not semantic data, right? Again, like that where the actual semantics of the data are defined externally to the list items themselves. I take your point on things like edit log and stuff, that those could be, those would absolutely be nice enhancements to the controlled list schema, right? But we did want to not make it like the data management platform. It's really just the way you manage controlled lists, if that answers your question.
I think Owen's been waiting for a little while here as well. So. Oh, you're going to get 2 mics just to make up.
I'll only ask one question. I was just wondering why in your migrate command that there's a graph parameter. I might be missing something, but would you not just change the entire collection to these new controlled lists, or do you have?
Yeah, I mean, that's a totally fair question. I think, as Rob mentioned a second ago, controlled list is born out of the requirements for Arch's Lingo. So when I was developing the command, I was trying to migrate the Lingo models that George and Phil had developed, and that was like the easiest way, just to do it by graph. But I suppose it's probably not that difficult to go in and inspect a node configuration on a collection base. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I sort of lied, so I'm going to ask a second question now.
That's fine.
So at the moment, if you had the same collection used on multiple graphs and you just only specified one of them, say, the others would still be using the old collection and the new ones using the controlled list. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's just updated at the graph level.
Sure. Cool. Thanks.
Got time for one more if anyone's got anything, or? Oh yeah, Gilly.
Thank you. So if I were to implement Lingo, I have these other resource models living in my Arches instance, right? And like, for example, I saw you sort of testing in the search UI, right? You were like searching for like that instance. And so I'm thinking about like, not to be too pejorative, but like, does this become extra noise that, especially around permissions, needs to be managed at the system level? And like, if, I'm sorry, that sounds meaner than I really mean it to be, but like are there gonna be like handy permission scripts or something like that to sort of like batch permission like Lingo resource model instances, or can you speak to that?
Sure, I think fair question. I mean, it's part of why we've developed Lingo as its own front-end application, so that there is separation of concerns there. To the end of like kind of treating the Lingo first-class citizens as their own separate. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah.
Sorry, man.
Just give Rob the mic.
It's important to upfront ask the question of, do you need Lingo? And if you're using Lingo, this system is for managing authority data, right? And you could use it alongside managing other data, right? But that's a design decision that you make as a project implementer, right? And I think, I could be wrong, but most of the projects that I've seen are not themselves managing authority data, right? They're importing authority data from some authority, and then they're making references to that. That's what controlled list is meant to facilitate, right? If that's you, then you don't need Lingo. You don't install Lingo, you don't have those models, right? If you need Lingo, then you're managing authority data, and you have to make the design decision about, is this going to share a system with my other models? And I don't know, maybe someday we get to the point where we really do need to, I could certainly see this, right, where you have many applications alongside each other in one project, and you really do want to kind of like segment them out, right, say at the search interface. I wouldn't say we're there yet, but that's certainly an idea, right? Can I add to that? Yeah.
Just maybe one thing to consider that might make it a little bit conceptually easier to decide whether you need Lingo or not is think of the case where you want to manage your vocab, you want to manage your concepts, your schemes centrally, and you want to use them across multiple applications. To me, that's a really good use case for Lingo. And if you buttonhole Phil at one of the breaks, one of the things I bet he'll say is historic England is going to have multiple Arches applications. And what they don't want to do, what you want to avoid is managing the same concepts in every application. Right? You want to manage them centrally, and then you want to use them in the appropriate application. And so if you think about separations of concerns, that's kind of the way to think about it, right? I'm going to be managing my concepts, and there's a whole body of scholarship about how you do that. And then once they're managed, you can decide, oh, I only need this portion of this concept for this application over here. And how am I going to implement that? I'm going to use controlled lists. So controlled lists are about how you populate the stuff in the drop-downs. Yeah. Lingo is about how do you decide what's going to be a member of those lists.
Cool, thank you. On that note, thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Johnathan.